All right, then let's dance. Because tonight we're gonna do something a little bit different. I want to do something slightly offbeat tonight. So we'll look at this position here, and then we'll read the comment from the person on YouTube that submitted this opening. But we'll get it on the board really quick. Let's get to it. All right, so D4, and we'll be checking it out from Black's point of view tonight. And knight F6, okay, so far everything's perfectly normal. Black is taking control, he's not letting you play E4. So white will almost always play C4. The idea is to play knight C3 and then try to get E4 in if black allows it. And okay, we have a ton of moves here. So the most popular is E6, and then usually you get a Nimzo-Indian, but you could get a Queen's Indian or a Catalan, depending on white's mood. You might also expect the King's Indian, or maybe if you play here, maybe you'll get a Grunfeld, who knows. This move is, more popular than what we're going to see tonight. So is this, even this is. But tonight, we're going to be looking at the move knight to C6. So a very unusual move. And this leads us into the Black Knights Tango. So not only is it a cool name, I want to read the comment from Me Love Peas 2. Can you guys cover the Black Knights Tango? It's not very popular, but there's nothing wrong with it, smiley face. So yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. And it's interesting because I always ask people before my lectures, what do you guys think of this opening and whatever. And the resounding response this week was, well, that's terrible. You can't be playing this. I mean, look, knight to C6, right? It just looks awful. But I do tend to agree with Me Love Peas because I do think you get some sound positions. And I think no matter what line they play, you will get a perfectly fine and playable position. I don't think it's dubious. It's, it's not the Wandering King that Danny Machuca loves. You're not just playing ridiculous moves on purpose. I think it's fine. And here, there's actually 3 moves that we're going to be looking at tonight. So we'll check out 3 different games. And it's very provocative, right? You're pretty much, I'm daring you to try to crush me, get the big pawn center, kick my knight around. And that's why it's called the tango. They can attack your knight, kick it all around the board a couple times. And black's going to hope you create a lot of weaknesses in the process. And okay, white's going to just try to crush you immediately. So the 3 main moves here are D5, so we'll take a look at that first. Knight to C3, okay, that's a logical enough move. And then, okay, but it does allow the move E5 by black, which is why the most popular response is knight to F3. So we'll take a look at that last. But let's accept the challenge. Let's see. D5, can white just blow black off the board? Does this move work? Because if it does, then this might just be refuted, right? If we just get all of our pawns out and crush black, then that would mean you couldn't play this way. So this is, a critical line. We want to see if it works. And your knight is attacked, so you got to move it. And it's sort of similar to Alekhine's defense, right? Where they, you encourage them to attack your knight and you move it around. Only in the Alekhine, normally the pawns, it's the E pawn that makes it to here. And white sets up his pawns on dark squares. But in this opening, you're going to see white set up his pawns on light squares, which makes a little bit of a difference. For one thing, when black gets a chance to attack the center, which he's going to need to do when he gets the chance, he's going to play the move like E6, which, unlike the Alekhine, when normally you attack the center with D6, this enables black to get his bishop out. So he's usually going to one of these 2 squares. And the black side, just from personal experience, this is something I used to play a lot, is usually easier to play than white because your plan is almost always the same. And it's usually white that has to decide what setup he's going to pick. And for some reason, occasionally when I have openings that I do really well with, I just stop playing them. So this one, I used to play it all the time. I had good success, and then I just stopped playing it for some reason. So I don't know, something about my personality. That's something I do a lot. All right, already we have a threat. So we're going to go take your pawn. So white has to be really careful here, and I think people unfamiliar with this position make a lot of mistakes. There is sort of the move you want to play is E4, which is very possible. That's actually the main move. But some people will defend with the queen or the pawn, or they'll only go to E3. And today we're going to look at a game where somebody played queen to C2, and it's not like a big developing move. You're not getting a big center. But we'll look at this one, which that's a good point. So the queen here, all right, we're defending the pawn. We're defending E4, so we're ready to push our pawn. And we're defending C3. So in a lot of lines, whenever we get checked, we're gonna, they're gonna be able to put a knight here, and the knight will be safe because the queen will be protecting it, so you might not be able to damage white's pawns. But it is worth showing one game just because it's so outstanding. I wanted to show this game where somebody really tried to crush black and just really went for it. They're gonna play f4 and just try to crush them. Okay, so black here played this move. Of course, not here. You're not just winning this pawn because what does black have? Or sorry, what is white's move here? There's actually two moves that win pretty easily. Right, queen e2, which is definitely one of the ways. And then, yeah, it's hard for you to sort all this out. Also, queen to d4 is a little more accurate because then, yeah, the computer wants you to sack your knight and you just take it with the queen. So yeah, black has to be a little bit careful there. So he attacks the center and white goes for it, right? I'm just gonna crush you, I'm gonna push all of my pawns. So you gotta move your knight. And all right, things are looking, okay for white. If I get a few more moves, I'm gonna get my knights out, I'm gonna protect my center. You can play here immediately. White showed a little bit of restraint in the following game here. And let's see if I can tell you who this was. This was Elberg Simmelink from a 1999 correspondence game. So, okay, so he took, and now what's going on here? The knight jumped in. So after he takes, are we getting trapped in there? What's going on? What is black's big point? Well, whenever you move your f-pawn, you want to be looking for the big queen check and whether that works and can win you the game. So here the move queen h4 is a very good move. You have to block with your g-pawn. If you don't, anywhere you go with the king, you're going to end up getting checkmated. So you got to play this move. And at the right moment, we're going to play knight takes g3 and exploit the fact that there's a pin here on the h file. Okay, but he played a slightly more accurate move. He threw this check in. And this gives white the opportunity to make a big mistake, which happened in this game. He should just develop his knight. If he plays bishop to d2, which is what happened in this game, he's putting his bishop in a pin. This will be important in just a second here. So now he takes. All right, so he's threatening to move the knight. So you got to do something. And white was counting on this resource, knight to f3. But he's actually in some serious trouble here because black has an outstanding move. So I had to show it when I saw this. Okay, I have to show you this game. So you might want to pause your videos at home, and we'll see if our audience here can figure out what did black do in this position. Because it's an amazing move.
Knight takes f4, threatening knight takes e3 check.
Awesome. Right, awesome. Yeah, so yeah, knight takes f4. So I bet white was shocked here. Like, what? Impossible. And the point is, yeah, if you take the queen, as Dennis said, checkmate. So that would end the game right there. So, wow, yeah, that just came out of nowhere. If this bishop weren't pinned, then you'd be able to just take this and the combination wouldn't work. So, okay, and the game continued. White got his bishop out of the way, it was attacked. And after this trade, black played another amazing move. So the good moves just keep coming for him. And this time, queen h3. So the same motif, yeah, if you take the queen, you're going to get checkmated. So very clever stuff. He decided to move his rook. And after he took the knight here, black was up 2 pawns. And his king is much safer. And he got a very easy and nice game to play. So black was able to convert this. So that does show the danger. You can get into a lot of trouble. You just try to blow them off the board. That can get you into some trouble here. But OK, we're going to look at another game right now. And this is Beneteau versus Manolache from 2006. So the player with the white pieces was a 2100, and the player with black was close to 2500. So a big disparity in rating, and it showed in this game. So OK, queen c2, we should attack the center. All right, white gets the big center that he wants, and now black will make a decision. Where are you going to put your bishop, and are you going to take here immediately or not? In the game, he decided to take immediately, which you don't have to, and he threw in the check. So he's decided where he wants his bishop to go. And you can defend either way. I think this move makes the most sense. That's the most natural square for the knight. So, okay, you could also play bishop to d2 with a little bit of a different game, but all right. for time, we'll focus here. And now there's one big mistake you can make when you play this. So if you play this as black, you really got to know this one trick, or you can lose a lot of games fast. Black is probably considering two moves, either castling or d6. But d6 is a horrible blunder. So white here has a little tactic. So let's see if we can find it. You can pause your video. Do you see what white would play in this position? Do you have it?
I believe it's Queen A5 check.
Awesome. All right, Dennis is on fire tonight. Queen A5 check. And okay, you can't save your bishop. So whatever you do, you lose your bishop. Boop. All right. So that's a recurring theme, because you get these positions all the time where you can play the move d6, but you want to make sure you're castled or that there's no check on h4, on a4, sorry. Okay, so he castled first. Excellent. And in the game, a little bit of a mistake was played. It's kind of hard for white here. He needs to come up with a plan. How should he develop his pieces? And black will usually do the same things. He'll move his knights around, get his bishop out, and it's white that has to decide how are you going to set up your pieces. And okay, in the game, he chose bishop to g5, which is a mistake and a very instructive one. So we'll look at that. But I think it's worth wondering, what happens if we play f4? Isn't that a critical line? What happens in here? So I'll just show one brief line that could happen. All right, so white's going to defend the center, black's going to attack it, and we'll just get some position where we've castled here. And white is about to have a big advantage. He has the nice center. If he can get a couple more developing moves, if he could just had the move h3 in, it would stop black's good move that he can actually play here. But after knight to g4, black is just in time to get something going. His lead in development was just enough that he could get a good position here. And already there's some problems based on the fact that bishop to c5 check is really annoying, and it's a pretty serious threat. So he has to do something, but let's blunder so we can show the point. We'll just move the bishop, and we'll allow bishop to c5 check. And after the king moves, there's nothing else. The move that I think most people would play here will work, but there's an even better move. So I guess what would you guys play in a position like this? It looks like we're getting them good here.
How about E3?
What's that?
E3 with the bishop.
E3 with the bishop. All right, and you're just trying to trade dark squared bishops? Is that your point?
Yeah.
And then if I take, the knight will fork me? Okay. So what if I defend this square? Okay, I just don't want you to put one of your pieces here, and I don't want you to put a piece here. So these are all common motifs in this position here. So if I get one move, maybe I'll be able to stop all your threats. So that's an interesting idea, and it works if your opponent plays along and takes your bishop and you get to fork him. But I think most people here would probably play knight to f2. That looks like a good move, and white is compelled to take with the rook because not taking, there's going to be some problems. So this does win in exchange, and so that's pretty good. But there's an even stronger move here, and that move is knight takes h2. The point is pretty much whatever you're doing here. I'm bringing my queen in, and this bishop is stopping your king from moving. So the real point too, if you take, you just get checkmated. So you wouldn't be able to take, and this is a little bit stronger than if you had just put the knight on f2 in this position. But it just goes to show whenever white spends a lot of time attacking all of your pieces and moving all of his pawns forward, especially that f pawn, a lot of bad stuff can happen on some of these diagonals here. So okay, so we castled first. In the game, bishop to g5. And this is a nice mistake to make because it's something that I see a lot of people doing, and here it's a 2100 player that did it. You don't usually want to make this pin when black's move h6 is a good move. So whenever you play bishop to g5, you always need to be calculating h6. And here, white really doesn't want to take the knight. Why would you just give your bishop away for a knight? If you were going to do that, you probably should have just stayed home and try to stay on your natural diagonal. So he must go back here. He could go back, but also that's you know, that's probably his best move. He should just retreat. He went back, and now he's going to compel white to take this knight anyway, which is why this move wasn't very good. White at some point is thinking about playing f4, so it makes sense to want to move this knight just so that f4 doesn't come with tempo. And here you get to attack the bishop. So now white pretty much has to take the knight and then admit that he's worse. So this bishop soiree didn't really work for him. One point is if we go back here, black has a simple little tactic. Hopefully you guys can see it. He can just take this pawn. So yeah, exploiting the pin. So that's why white, he has to take this. And we take back. And black's position is much better. We got the two bishops. It's not obvious why white center was pushed. And something that seems to happen occurred in this game. Whenever you play this line, people always from move one, they're thinking, you know, I got to crush you. There's something wrong with this opening. I need to always be thinking about crushing you. And that kind of lasts long into the game. Even when people are worse or something, they're still thinking, well, I got to just keep doing something crazy and crush you to prove that this opening is unsound. So here, white went queenside, which is very dangerous. But maybe he's still hoping, all right, I'm still going to get these guys rolling somehow, someday, and I'm going to attack you, and my attack's going to be faster. But it turns out that's probably not the case in this situation. So okay, black needs to make a move. Let's get our pieces out. And black's attacking plan is he's going to get this bishop out of the way, and he can open the c file at his choosing. And he can bring one of his rooks to the c file, and that's coming pretty quickly. White, on the other hand, if he chooses some sort of slow attacking plan, like all these moves, it's going to take him 3, 4, 5 moves to even start his attack. And black will be a little bit quicker over here. So he decided, again, not a developing move, but he doesn't want, after knight to f3, for black to be able to play bishop to g4. So that's why he played here. And OK, so we see it striking at the center. And he really doesn't mind. He's hoping that you take this, because opening the b file is going to be excellent for black. And the fact that you have, you know, weakened pawns there in the center, right? You got some hanging pawns. That's not as important as the dynamic play that black's going to get. So lots of these positions in the tango, they end up being really dynamic, where it's more important to have active and powerful pieces than it is to have a healthy pawn structure. Because in this situation, everybody's playing for checkmate here. So, okay. He got his knight out. He got the bishop out of the way. Now a rook is coming to c8. And all right, it's not easy to play white in this position. Let's see what he did. So he moves the king out of the way. And either rook can go to c8. But all right, he's looking pretty good in this position. Okay. So, all right, not the best. Maybe he did want to make sure his rook was always protecting this d pawn. So we'll see what happened now. He took the knight, and it's, you know, interesting. This was always something that white had to calculate. What happens if he takes my knight? Will I have to take with my queen or with a pawn? And he took with a pawn. If you take with the queen, which is also, you know, a thing, it might even be a little bit better. Once you see the game, you might think that the position you'll see here is a little bit better. So black can either just grab this pawn and he's a pawn up. Black is much better in this position, so. But he can also not do that. He can just take here, not win any material in this line after something like this. He's not up any material, but his position's great. This knight is looking at all these excellent dark squares. The rook is going to swing over here. And if knight to b3, one of the points is bishop to a4. And whatever you do next, we grab this guy and we just continue putting our pieces on good places. And it'll be a tough endgame for black to ultimately win, but he's a lot better, so he should have really good chances of winning. So you can compare that to the game, because what happens in the game is he takes with his pawn. Okay, so we take in the center, and this guy is particularly weak. So black needs to come up with a way to attack that pawn. And there's a couple different ways to do it. Rook to c5 is fine. And you have two knight moves that can do it. And he chose the more active one. So knight to f4. And you have some problems. How do you defend your pawn? one problem, for instance, is you can't move your knight away because either rook takes c3 or bishop to f5. I mean, bishop to f5 looks pretty crushing here. Would be pretty bad for you. So notice this knight is also defending the f5 square, which might be important in a lot of these lines here. So he decided queen to b3. It's also worth noting that if c4, one way black can just keep attacking is b5. And okay, this is going to be quite good for him. You can't take this either way. We're going to open this up and we're going to start attacking. So he decided queen b3, that's the way to do it. And all right, he attacks the pawn again. So he had to defend with his c pawn. And now how to keep attacking here. Well, the move he played in the game was fine. I think it's a move a lot of people would play on autopilot here. He brought his rook over. All right, doubling your rooks, which is obviously very good for him. But he did miss a chance to play an even stronger move, which is b5. And yeah, it's hard to do anything about that. For example, if you take with the knight, what would black play here? Rook b8. All right, this also probably is a strong move, but you're missing a mating attack here. Bishop to f5 check. Yep, so then when the knight is missing, this is pretty bad for Team White over here. So so this looks pretty strong. If you run away, you're going to get checkmated. The strongest move here is to take the knight. And with the knight gone, whichever way you take, we got your king's wide open. We got a queen and a rook that can check you. So either of them will win. The fastest is with the queen in this particular case. And okay, so let's just get checkmated here. Right, so you imagine that there must be some sort of mating attack when you're that wide open, and there is. So b5, a very strong move, but this move is fine as well. Black is still enjoying everything about this position. So let's see. The knight was attacked, and he found a way to win a pawn here. Pretty good. He traded these guys, and then he took this. And White really shouldn't take that knight, but he really did. And now he's losing. So again, you may want to pause your videos. This one isn't terribly tough, but what was the move here that black played? Yeah.
C1.
Yeah, rook to c1. And, okay, this move was played and White resigned here. He's going to lose a piece. So he's going to have to play king to a3. And if only Danny Machuca were here, we could talk about Black's next move. Because I'm sure, I haven't talked to Danny about this position yet, but I guarantee you he would just trade the queens. Because that's what he likes to do in these positions. He always will trade down to the endgame. And all right, so this is just sort of a different chess philosophy. Obviously, you can either trade queens or you can take here immediately. So I wish he was here. We could fight about it. Because this is something that we always talk about. And I've talked about it before in these videos. I would keep the queens on the board here because your king is here and my king is really safe. So if you want to trade queens with me, that's fine. But I'm keeping the queens on the board here. This would be my move. And I'll have to ask Danny, is that what he would play? Because I'm pretty sure it would be. That's his style. So, okay, well, we'll go back a little bit and check out a different line here. All right, so this next game that we're going to look at, this is Spiller Orlov from 1991. So, and in this game, we're going to look at a different move. Knight to c3. And there's more than one thing that black can do here. It is a rather flexible opening because you haven't committed to anything in the center. We're going to look at e5, which is by far the main line here. But you can consider e6, hoping for some sort of Nimzo-Indian. You might be able to try d6, and then you've tried to play a King's Indian. But we're going to look at e5 today, which is what your typical tango move would be in this position. And white doesn't have to push, though he almost always does. He could, for example, play here and transpose to the English 4 knights. So that is something that you probably want to look at. And I think that the English 4 knights is actually kind of interesting, even though there's somebody at the club right now that I know thinks it's a pretty boring opening. But I think it's pretty rich in possibilities, so I like it. All right, d5. And so the knight must retreat. So normally we're going to go this way. It is probably possible to go to b8 and then try to play moves like this and get your knight to c5. That's a very common way to play. But this is by far the more popular way. White gets the center. We move our knight. And here's where the position really begins for this line. So most of these moves are played in almost every game. And we get here, and again, it's white that has to decide how he's going to set up all of his pieces. And black, it's easy again. We choose which square we want for the bishop. We castle, we play d6, and then we start attacking the center. Black is usually, it's pretty easy to play this. So, okay. What white can choose, he can do something modest. He can just get his knight out. He can play lines where he plays f3 or h3. But the most common way is bishop to e3, and that was played in this game. And that does cut out one of black's options. Now you're not going to play bishop to c5. So that's been ruled out. So it's obvious where the bishop's going. It's going to b4. And okay. Notice too that even if you play queen to c2, as if this was a Nimzo-Indian, it doesn't prevent black from doubling the pawns. Because you can take here, and you can't take with the queen because your e-pawn is hanging. So, okay, in the game he decided he'd play f3. Okay, that makes sense. And black takes immediately. Again, we can blunder. So yeah, hopefully you see it this time too, what white would play here. Again, this check will win the bishop. So yeah, hopefully that was on your radar. And this is your last chance if you want to double his pawns. You don't have to, but it seems like a perfectly fine way to play. Now d6 is fine. There's no risk because our bishop, won't be isn't hanging over here because he's gone. And all right, for some reason now this position, almost everybody plays the same plan as white, which is to get rid of their doubled pawn. But this is something that black should actually welcome because when they do that, they open the c file. So I think white should probably look for some different plan in this position, but this is what everybody seems to do, so fine. We castle, and g3, which we see a lot in positions. All right, you're just trying to keep my knight out. All right, fair enough. But now black has a good plan. He can threaten to win this pawn. I'm forcing you to open the c file. And now we'll get some really good play on the c file. The queen is looking at a good square here. Eventually one of these rooks might come over. We're going to get some pressure down the c file. And this knight has an awesome home too. So black's position here is already much better. So let's attack the pawn. White will defend it. And let's get that knight in there. So here white was thinking, all right, he wants to take my bishop. And he didn't want to lose his bishop. All right, that's fair enough. So he put his bishop back. And all right, how to make progress here as black. He's doing pretty well on the queen side. And the good thing is he can play on both sides of the board here. He knows white is about to castle. He can consider, interrupting his plans. But black had a pretty good idea in this game. f5. So when white castles, his plan is to open the f file and get control. So if he can do this and he can take control over the f file, then all of his pieces are going to be better than white's. So here he did take. And in this position, he forced white to make a decision with his rook. So you don't have to trade rooks here. You could play rook f2 or something like that. But he did trade. And now it's black that owns the f file. So if you just take a look at the quality of some of these pieces here, you'll notice they're a lot better than all of white's pieces. And okay, we have a threat. We're going to play rook to f1, which in this position you'd have to take with a queen. So white decided, all right, I'm going to get out of that and play queen to d2. But this falls for a little tactic here. So black played another really nice move in this position. Yeah, all of his pieces are better, so the tactics should favor him. And so here he played a nice move. Does anyone see it? Yeah.
Is it queen takes a2?
Yeah, good job. Yeah, queen takes a2, attacking the rook. And yeah, so the obvious point is if we take this queen, it's checkmate. And then, so it's funny, so white saw in this position that he can't take the queen, but then he decided to put his rook on b1, which is funny, because what did black play? He played one more move in this game.
Queen takes rook.
Yeah, right, so he saw that you couldn't do that, and then yeah, he allowed queen takes rook. And now the game's over, you're getting mated in 1 or 2 moves here. But what's really funny about this position here is this exact position occurred in a different game 10 years later. So there was a game with Joel Benjamin that had this exact same position, even though they reached it by a much different move order and a different number of moves. But all right, so it occurred. In that game, white made black try a little bit harder. He moved the rook to e1. And the game didn't last much longer, so we'll breeze through this. But okay, he protects his knight. He's attacking e4. All right, he gets these pawns going. Rook gets all better, and yeah, pretty soon he's like, all right, enough. And this is pretty bad. He's going to win some stuff here. But it's just funny because the same exact position occurred again and in a different order. So all right, one more game here. All right, so this final game here, this is going to be Maiorov versus Azarov from 2005. You can probably make fun of me for every name I've said tonight because I'm not pronouncing any of them right. But we'll look at the most critical line. So this is a big majority of tango games are in this line. And people play really wacky stuff here. But okay, these moves are both really terrible, so I don't advise them. But the big moves here are either e6 or d6. You can play d6 with the idea of transposing to a King's Indian if that's what you want to play. For example, we're going to get like a mainline King's Indian here. So something like that is very possible. And the other possible way to play after knight to f3 is e6, which is the more popular move. And after knight to c3, we've actually transposed to a Nimzo-Indian. And this is the Zurich variation, which it hasn't always been the most popular move, but I suspect at club level, this opening is going to get a lot more popular because there was a book written by Krzysztof Sielecki, also known as Chess Explained. And you're on YouTube, so you know Chess Explained. And his book is excellent. I have it, so I do recommend it. It's a good one. And so he covers lines where black puts his knight on c6. So what could the point be? Well, let's let white defend his knight here. And the point is he's going to use a dark squared strategy. He knows at some point he's going to be forced to cough up his bishop here, so he's going to lose the bishops. So that's a big plus for white. So in order to compensate for that, he's going to put all of his pawns on dark squares. So the knight on c6 will help you when you play the move e5. And at some point, whenever they play d5, your knight will go back. And we'll see a little bit more once we get there why that's an okay move. All right. So this move, which is considered better than a3, a3 is the other big move here. But in this position, white intends to keep the queen on c2, where she's eyeing the e4 square, which is very important in this line. And all right, the most accurate move here is to castle. Other moves have been tried, but they are a little bit slow. You do need to be careful. If white gets these moves in really quick, you can get into some trouble here. So castling is best, and now let's get the bishop. And white should be happy here. He is a little bit better in this position. It's pretty pleasant to play white here. You got the 2 bishops. You got a little bit more space. But it's let's check it out. Let's see what's going to happen here. So we want to play e5. So let's get our queen here. And now white makes a big decision, because what are you going to do with this bishop? So there's 3 moves that you might consider in this position. e3 is actually the most popular, so we'll check that out. e4 is also a very critical line, to which black will play d5. You might even consider g3 and putting the bishop on g2. This also is very possible. But I think the restraint e3 is white's best try for an advantage here. He's keeping the e4 square free of a pawn, so he's going to occupy it with pieces later on. And at some point, we'll play, probably bishop to d3, getting even more control over that square. All right. And now with this move, we can blunder with white. That's possible. So black has stopped this move from happening. If he plays bishop to e2, it might run into bishop to g4. And white probably doesn't want to trade pieces. He's got the big space advantage here. So the move that I think white should play here, if we can see after d5, sorry, the knight goes back, is to play the move knight to d2. The purpose of this move is not to allow you to ever play bishop to g4 in a situation where you might be able to take one of our pieces. And we're getting ready now to play bishop to d3 without having to worry about e4 forking our pieces. So a very good move. And the most popular move in this position, and this hasn't been played a whole lot of times, so there's probably a lot of room here to come up with some new stuff, is c6. And if white takes, you take back with the knight. Also very popular, I guess, is a5. This makes some sense. In a lot of lines, you want to stop white from playing b4 and just getting a lot of space on the queen side. But this game amused me because of this next maneuver, so for that reason alone, I decided to talk about this game. And it wasn't covered extensively in Selecki's book, so all right. I didn't want to pick something somebody's already talked about. Knight to e8. So yeah, an unusual move, which is why it's only been played once. Like, what, knight e8? What's the point of this move? Well, all right, white said, you show me what is the idea. And here, queen to g5. So very interesting. He's attacking the g2 pawn. And in the game, white decided to play g3, and then he castled queenside. He thought it was too risky to castle. I mean, what happens if you do castle? This is something we should check out really briefly here. Well, he must have seen bishop to h3, and you got to do something here. You can't play g3 or I take your rook. So you got to defend g2, and maybe it was this move f5 that kind of threw him off. He's like, well, I mean, black might be getting pretty active here. He's threatening to play e4. I'm going to have to either play e4 myself, or I might have to play king h1 and just get out of the pin. And so who knows what lines he calculated. But he decided, I'm not going in for that, g3. And now a funny thing happened. Queen to e7. So it's the Queen's Tango. Yeah, an interesting maneuver. Queen to e7 to g5 to e7. But he provoked g3, and he convinced white to castle queenside. So I guess that's a success for black. And so that's where white went. And so we got sort of a similar scenario where white should start thinking about how he's going to attack on the king side. Black's going to be looking at some of the same moves that we've seen before. We should be thinking about attacking, opening up some lines over here. But first, let's go ahead and throw the move a5 in here, just so we might be able to lock down on your pawns, and that'll make it easier for us to open up your position later on. If we can play a4, then these pawns will be kind of stuck, and it'll be easy for me to open up lines. So white said b3. So if you ever play a4, I can play b4 and keep things closed over there. And all right, it's time to get our pieces out. The knight is going to c5. That was the intentional, along with knight to b8. And then, yeah, white played kind of interesting. I think it makes more sense for him to consider just going for it here, because that's something that he does adopt later on, but he doesn't get it in quite in time, and black is a little bit faster in this game. Perhaps he's hoping maybe sometimes there's going to be tricks here, but we'll see what happens here. Knight to c5. And so now he's going for it. He's going to try to open up some stuff over there. And an interesting thing happens in this game too. Every time you think black is about to do something over here on the queen side, he surprises you, and he does something over on the king side. So okay, a couple normal moves are played, but now the knight is thinking about going to g4, where it would be forking two pawns. So what is white going to do? He defends one of his pawns, and the knight goes to g4 anyway. All right, your e-pawn is attacked. So he gets his bishop out of the way, defending his pawn. And it's interesting, this move knight g4, you know, is it a good move or not? His point now is he wanted to play the move f6, which he thinks will be a good defensive move. If white ever takes here, we'll take back. And the fact that the pawn structure will be symmetrical will make it hard for you to crash through. But now white does get to get his attack going. So the pawns are rolling forward, and he's getting ready to play g5. So you should probably stop him. So knight to f7 was played. But what's going on? Is white actually encouraging, is black encouraging white to get a big attack here? Is this all been misplayed by black? It's kind of interesting. How is black going to get his attack going? Because white's coming now, and he's coming pretty fast. So, okay. So he wants to play, you know, a move like g5. But, all right. So he's got to lock this down, and now he's going to play h4 and g5. So also another point of getting this knight out of the way is you can play rook to b8. Okay, so he's getting ready. Here come these moves. Black's going to try to get to him. Who's going to be there first? So white thinks, all right, I'm going to stop you from playing here. But he is playing on the side where his opponent is attacking him. So this actually might give black some opportunities to open things up. You know, he can play c6 and b5. And this might actually be a liability for him. And so black decides, you know, he's going to start to attack the center. White has, you know, the same ideas. But here he actually makes a big mistake. He was always thinking he would protect his pawn here with a move like e4. And then that gives him the opportunity to start rolling these guys. But this is actually a big mistake. White has an awesome move here that he didn't find, because black's position is much better. He's about to really open up the king, and his attack is coming faster. But if white found the right move here, then his game might have been okay. And that move is knight to d4. Okay, now we see the rook on the same file as the queen. That's finally meaning something. Because if we allow you to jump in here, then that's a pretty good knight, and that'll be really annoying. So black almost has to take this. And after, okay, we're going to lose one of our pieces, so desperado. We move our queen back away. This is not so easy for black to open up the position here. We can play a move like bishop to g2 to at least for a while stop you from playing this move based on the fact that we can now take here. So this would have been interesting, and you know, white would probably be okay in a position like this. But it's a difficult move to find, and the idea of playing e4 and getting these guys going seems like a very sensible way to play here. So black is thinking about b5, and he has to be really careful. If he plays b5 right away, he's thinking white is going to be able to take here in between. So black can consider sacking a piece if he wants. In the game, he put his bishop back, so now he can play b5, and this move won't come with tempo. You know, it is kind of unclear if this piece sack should work or not. Because, okay, you attack the bishop. Obviously, we can't just take here, or white gets to close everything up, and now your attack is gone. But he could consider taking here. This is an exciting, sharp way to play. But it's not clear that this position actually will be better for black, because the best move here is to take. This move is important because after a move like this, he wants to make sure in some lines he can put a bishop here, because the king probably needs to blockade the pawns here. Black has some tricks. You know, maybe I can get my queen on your king here. But it's not so easy, because anytime you play d5, I have bishop to b4. And do you really have enough for your piece? Obviously, those are pretty nice pawns, but now maybe it'll be white's turn. He's going to get going on the king side, and he is up a piece. So it's not really clear that that would be the best. And there's no reason for black to take the risk in this position. So bishop to e8 makes a lot of sense. And what are you going to do? I'm playing b5 next. All right, white plays a little bit of defense. He knows after b5, he's going to take this way. And okay, the rook will be doing some defensive jobs here. So b5 comes. He does take with the a pawn when we take back. All right, so what's happening? It looks pretty dangerous for white. So some more stuff was traded. So will that nullify the attack? Well, probably not. All right. And now just, again, in this game, whenever you think something is coming over here, you know, there was going to be some sort of attacking move, we're going to sack something. Black surprises white, and he plays on the other side of the board. So in this position, not only is he just threatening the h-pawn, but if the pawn just moves, say white plays h4, he is thinking about putting the knight here anyway, with the idea of coming back to f4, and he'll have two knights looking in at d3. So that is a major problem. And so I like this. The piece that was doing the least now is going over on the other side of the board and causing a lot of trouble. And white decides, all right, I got to defend my pawn. But all right, he's in for a big surprise here. Now black plays a very strong move that is just the winning move here. So yeah, probably he had to play h4 and allow the knight, you know, to maneuver his way to f4. But this move was played, and black played sort of a simple move. It's not a tactic here, but I'll let you guys pause your video and I'll let the audience here see if they can find what black played in this position. It's a simple move, it's not a big tactic or sacrifice or anything. Has anyone got it? All right. The move was queen to a7. So eyeballing the rook, we're getting ready to move the knight away, probably with check, and then your rook will be hanging. And the problem for white is it's not easy to move his rook, because if you go back, then you're undefending your h-pawn. If you go laterally, then what happens in the game happens. And if you defend it, obviously your rook was on a1 for some defensive reasons, so this attack is going to be a little bit stronger with the rook gone. Well, he decided, okay, I'm going to stay where I'm protecting the pawn, and he must have missed black's move here. So now this is a tactic. It is black to play and find the strongest move here. All right, somebody looks like he's thinking about it. He looks like he knows. Who can figure it out? It is tricky. This is actually quite a nice move that black played here. So, oh, you got it?
That's right, knight takes e4.
Right, excellent. That was played, and the game came to an end. So yeah, awesome. The point of this move is if you capture, we can recapture this. And if the queen takes now, hopefully we can see what black was thinking about playing in this position. It's queen to f2, and the fork should decide the day. And this position is not fun to play if you're white, and white said, I'm done, that's enough. And the game ended right here. So it is very interesting. I hope that gives you just a brief outline of what happens when you play the tango. It can be a very dynamic, exciting opening. And obviously, we were a bit unfair to white. It's not like we gave white a very fair shake in this lecture. But now that you have the false impression that the tango just wins by force, we're going to go have the last round of our tournament tonight. And somebody, possibly somebody sitting in the front row, is going to win a book tonight.